So ammonia is excreted out of the body, and the organisms are called
Ammonotelic.
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 Okay, right. Then
Urea.
urea,
Ureotelic.
ureotelic. Right. And then
Uric acid.
uric acid, uricotelic. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Ureo and urico. Sometimes it's, yeah. So uricotelic. Now, in the order of toxicity, which one is most toxic?
Ammonotelic.
Yes, ammonia is the most toxic and uric acid is the least toxic. Urea somewhere comes in between the both, right? Therefore, to discard ammonia, we need lots of water. This is the amount of water required to discard. Required to discard. Okay. And uricotelic required the least amount of water to discard the waste. Now, as I told you, from the digestive tract, we ingest, from the respiratory system, we exhale, but from the excretory system only we excrete. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
This waste is always the metabolic waste. So excretory system only deals with metabolic wastes, not with digested wastes or respired waste, just the metabolic waste. Now, for that matter, CO2 is also a metabolic waste, but it's in gaseous form. So to excrete that out, we just can exhale it through the lungs. So we do not have to go through kidneys. Is it clear? And anyways, it's a gaseous substance, so we cannot filter it out through kidneys. So write down just the process, just define excretory system and distinguish it from other systems. The process by which metabolic wastes are eliminated from the body. Metabolic wastes are eliminated from the body is called excretion. And just write it down that it's different from egestion. It's different from egestion. E-G-E-S-T-I-O-N. So this is excretion. And it's different from egestion. And what is egestion? Just write that down also. Egestion is simply discharge of undigested food material. That part which cannot be digested or from which we cannot get anything, any useful nutrient. So the discharge of undigested food particle is called egestion. Okay. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I could see Omar, Aisha, and Rehab has joined. Hello, everyone. Any questions regarding previous classes?
No, sir.
Okay. So excretion and egestion, so there's no confusion now, right? So from now onwards, we will only talk about this, where we are filtering out waste, nitrogenous waste from the blood and then throwing it out through urine. Okay, we will not talk about this. So none of the organs which are associated with respiratory system or digestive system will be a part of it. Cool.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now all these things, urea, uric acid, and ammonia, are called nitrogenous wastes. Why are they called nitrogenous wastes? Because what is ammonia? Do you remember the formula for ammonia? NH3, right? So this is ammonia. Now it's nitrogen based, right? Urea, uric acid, and ammonia are nitrogen based. They're not carbon based products. That's why it's called nitrogenous waste. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If something is getting out of the body which is carbon based, then it's called like carbon based waste, but it's nitrogenous waste. Okay, so let's talk about human excretory system right away. So we'll again follow the same route where we'll first try to understand the broader anatomy, and then we'll go to the physiology. Okay. Now, the good thing is that the anatomy of excretory system is very simple. It's not complicated, nothing. But the difficult part is that with this very simple anatomy, body does a very complex function of excretion. Okay. So mainly, what do we have in our excretory system? So for human excretory system, it consists of a pair of kidneys, the most major organs, and a pair means it will be two kidneys, then a pair of ureter and one urinary bladder. Ureter connects kidneys with urinary bladder simply, and then one urethra to just throw everything out as urine. Simple, right? Seems very simple. And if you just draw it, so you have kidney is like a bean shaped structure, and you have two kidneys, as I told you. And I also told you the anatomical position of it. Remember when we were discussing kidneys on the dorsal side or on the ventral side?
On the dorsal side.
Yes. Towards the back. Okay. So let's say these two are kidneys, right and left. And then from the kidney, there'll be a ureter coming out from both the kidneys. So there'll be, this is ureter. And this goes and merges with urinary bladder. So this is your urinary bladder. And then at the end of the urinary bladder, you have urethra. You just throw everything out. So it's very simple. Kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. Okay, but the complexity comes in this organ, kidney itself. So kidney is a very complex organ in terms of. Remember, yesterday I asked you to go and read about osmoregularity, osmosis, something like that. Did you go back and take a look on that? What is osmosis, diffusion, things like that? Anyone got time? Okay, so I'll start from the basics, don't worry. So let's do something for the boards first. So let's just write about function of kidneys. So tell me, what are the functions of kidneys? So we all think that kidneys are the excretory organ. So their only function is to filter out waste from the blood and to throw it out into the urethra, into the urinary bladder through the ureters, right? But that's not all. Kidney does a lot of other things. Okay. For example, what are the function of kidneys? Anyone? Any function of kidney you know? Okay, let's start from the very basic one. What does it do? Tell me.
Filtration of blood.
Yes, so that happens in kidneys. But before it's a very, before it filters the blood, the concept how filtration happens, we have to understand. Now, for filtration to happen, we need to make, or we need to establish basically a transport system, just like diffusion. Remember in lungs, alveoli and capillaries used to transport things in and out on the basis of diffusion, right? And what was the
Yes,
logic
sir.
there? The logic was partial pressure of the gases which are present in the alveoli and in the blood. Okay, that was the driving principle. So here also there has to be a driving principle so that all the waste goes into the kidneys, because kidneys, see, These organs are just working on scientific principles. They have evolved like that. It's not that kidney is something conscious. It knows what is a waste, and when the blood is going, it can pick out the waste. No, there has to be one single principle, scientific principle on which filtration happens. Okay, that's why for every living organ, we can make non-living artificial counterparts. Have you heard of dialysis? We'll discuss about dialysis. Yes, Mariam, you've heard of dialysis?
Yes, sir.
What is dialysis?
A tube or something which does the same like kidney.
Yeah, we put a tube when the kidneys are not functional, basically to take all the blood out of the body, not at once. So blood comes out, and then there is a chamber in which blood goes from one side and then gets filtered and then comes out after getting filtered. Now it's a purified blood and then goes back into the body. So there are two tubes put in a patient's body. One collects the blood, then it goes into a chamber, which basically in principle acts like kidneys only. So we know the scientific principle. That's why we can replace the function of kidneys by a dialysis machine, about which we'll study now. So first function, write down, is they are primary excretory organs. So just keep writing. I'm just dictating. Just keep writing. And anyone who needs repetition, just please say that you need to repeat something. They are the primary excretory organs, but also plays a major role in homeostasis. You know what is homeostasis? There is this one word called homeostasis. Homeostasis. Have you heard the word stasis or homeo before? Okay, we'll come to this word if you don't know. Just leave it for now. Now write down, plays an important role in homeostasis by regulating the water salt balance. So first thing it does is it regulates water salt balance. Now, what is the relationship between water salt? It's now some organic chemistry will come in here, because kidneys is all about organic chemistry. So regulates water salt balance. What is the relationship between water and salt? Anyone? What happens if salt is present somewhere? It's the concept of solute and solvent to make a solution. So if you have a glass of water, okay, now just be with me and tell me if you're understanding this, because that's very important. If you have a glass of water, okay, there are two glasses, each with water, just water. Then in one glass, you add a spoon of salt. In this, there is simply water, no salt. Now, what is the difference? Will their volume be different? If I put 1 spoon of salt in one glass and I do not put anything in the other glass, to begin with, the volume of water was same in both. Now, what will happen to the volume? Will the volume change? When salt or sugar dissolves in water, does the volume changes? You have never dissolved salt or sugar in water? Never made a shikanji, lassi, or a mojito or something?
Sir, it does change.
It doesn't change. Okay. So till the point it reaches saturation, it will not change, because salt and sugar dissolves in a way where they occupy spaces in between the water molecules. So they do not increase the volume of the water till a point where the water, so 1 glass of water has a limit how much salt it can dissolve in it. After that limit, which is called the saturation point, or it's chemistry. After that limit, the salt will not simply dissolve. It will just start getting accumulated at the bottom. And then your volume will start rising, because there is something at the bottom and water is on top of it. Is it clear? Just like sand in water.
Yes,
When
sir.
you put sand in water, sand never dissolves in water. It mixes with it, but if you leave it for some time, it sediments back and the water up level rises. Do you understand? So even if you put 1 tablespoon of sand it will increase the volume slightly. But if you put 1 or 2 tablespoons of sugar or salt, it will not increase the volume. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, what is happening? Because these molecules of sugar and salt are getting accommodated in between the molecules of water, right? So what's happening to the water now? What's happening to the solution? So here it's just the solvent, right? If it is pure water, it's just the solvent. We do not call it solution, but now it's called a solution, because to call something a solution, you need to have two things: a solute, which is dissolved in a solvent, right? Now the solute here is salt, NaCl, and the solvent here is water. Hence it becomes a solution. Now, how is this solution different from just water? Can anyone tell me?
More density?
More density. Correct. But yes, you're on the right path again. But what after density? Let's go one step forward. Like for gases, there was a concept of partial pressure, right? You understand?
Yes, sir.
Now there is a concept of concentration, partial concentration. So if we put solute in a solvent, what happens to the concentration of the solvent?
It increases.
It,
Increases.
how will the concentration increase? The overall concentration will decrease, no? If so, earlier it was pure water, so everything was just water. Now you put salt in it. Now the volume stays the same, but there is salt also present with water. So the overall concentration of water in that medium is less because salt is also there. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I join these two glasses by a tube, I was not okay. I join it by a tube, and there's a semi-permeable membrane in the tube, which will allow the movement of substances on the basis of their gradient. So, what do you think? What will be the flow to which direction, and which thing will flow?
From H2O to solution?
Let's say A and B. So from, you are saying from A to B things will flow. So water will flow from A to B. This is what you mean?
Yes.
Why?
Because H2O concentration is more.
So according to gradient, but salt can also come from B to A, no?
Yes, sir.
The gradient of salt is more here. There is no gradient of salt here.
Yes, sir.
Right? I'll give you one more example. I think that is more biologically relevant to you. Okay. Anyone has got sore throat or swelling in the throat because of any infection or cold or something?
Yes,
For
sir.
me, especially when I came to Delhi.
Oh, that was, I'm so sorry for that, Aisha. So are you back now? How are you?
No, not yet. I will be back at 2.
Okay. Are you still in Delhi?
No, I came back to Bihar. Actually, my grandmother is not well.
Okay, I'm sorry. So if you got any swelling in throat because of any infection or any inflammation or anything, you go to doctor, and doctor always tells you that, you know, take this medicine and also do gargle with lukewarm salty water. Right? Never been to doctor. So salt water gargles always help in reducing swelling in throat. Have you heard of it?
Yes, sir.
Have you done it?
Yes, sir.
Why does salt water gargling reduces swelling is the question. What happens in swelling? Why do tissues swell up biologically? See, if you do not pay attention to these things and do not ask yourself these questions and just live your life, then biology is happening all around you. So there is swelling in the tissues. So what happens when tissues swell up? The water, it gets filled with water, liquid basically, which most of it is water. Okay, and lymph, remember?
Yes, sir.
Interstitial tissue. And lymph is also around 92% water. Okay, because it's just plasma. So water gets filled up in the tissues and it swell up. Swelling also happens in people's fingers and toes in winters. That's again the same, because of the same reason, that water gets filled up. Now to remove that water, doctor tells you to do a gargle with salt water, lukewarm salt water. Warm because it should not irritate your throat more. Cold water can even irritate your throat further. And the presence of salt will make sure, so what happens? This is your throat cavity, okay? And the tissues adjacent are swollen. So your throat cavity feels choked, right? Because it's filled with water. Now you put a lot of salty water here in between, in this cavity, when you do gargles. So this salt attracts water out from these tissues. Do you understand why?
Yes, sir.
Because the gradient of water in the salty water is less than pure water. So pure water tends to move towards gradient, towards salty water. So it oozes out water and gives relief to your swelling. Swelling becomes less and less the more you do gargles. The same concept is used here. Do you understand now?
Yes, sir.
So wherever in biology and in chemistry also, just remember it now and remember it for excretory system. Wherever salt goes, water will follow. Will you remember it?
Yes, sir.
Now, if we have to maintain water salt balance, this is the rule. If you want to reduce amount of water, introduce salt there, and then water will follow the salt. Cool?
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. Okay, good. And second thing it does is, it also regulates acid-base balance of the blood. Write down. What's happening? Sorry. Yeah. It also regulates acid-base balance of the blood. Now, where does acid-base balance comes from? Remember bicarbonate ions, HCO3.
Yes, sir.
Bicarbonic acid, H2CO3. Okay, now done. A few more things. So it regulates water salt balance, which is also known as water electrolyte balance. It regulates acid base balance, which in short is called blood pH. Okay. Also, it maintains the osmolarity of blood. Anyone knows what is osmolarity? Maintains osmolarity of blood. Right on the third point. Maintains osmolarity. What is osmolarity? What is molarity? That you have done in, have you done molarity, mole?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So tell me, what is molarity? Don't remember?
Something, yes, I don't remember.
Okay. We'll come to it. But remember that osmolarity is directly related to the, it directly regulates the osmosis. Now, what is osmosis? Osmosis, you all must be knowing. What is osmosis? Rehab. What is osmosis? Are you there, Rehab? Osmosis. We read the word diffusion. What is diffusion? Aisha, what is diffusion? All you will do is answer.
Sir,
Yeah, at the word. What is
can you
diffusion?
please repeat it again?
I'm asking what is diffusion?
Diffusion. It's the movement of the substance from the higher concentration to lower concentration.
And what is osmosis?
Osmosis. It's about water, right?
What about,
Hello.
yes, yes. What about water?
um. Osmosis. I don't know how to say it.
Okay.
Wait, sir. I guess I can say it. Both are same, right?
No, it's
No,
opposite.
no. Wait, it's the solution of it's the movement of water molecules from higher concentration of water to lower concentration of water.
Okay, do you agree, Rehab?
I think.
Yeah, Rehab was also saying something. Rehab, do you agree? For osmosis, what is osmosis? You were giving an answer, I realize. Yes.
It's from high concentration to low concentration.
Of water.
Yes.
Then it's same as diffusion, no?
Yeah, but diffusion doesn't occur in fluid.
Diffusion, it's not true that diffusion doesn't occur in fluid. See, diffusion and osmosis, the concepts are exactly same. Anything moves because of the difference in gradient. Now, diffusion is everything apart from water's movement, we call it diffusion. But when water comes, we just use another term called osmosis. So the movement of water from its higher concentration to lower concentration, or from its higher gradient to lower gradient, is called osmosis. And movement of everything else from its higher concentration or higher gradient to lower concentration or lower gradient is called diffusion. Okay. So mostly for liquid systems, osmosis word is used, but it's actually scientifically very specific to water itself, because water is also known as universal solvent. Have you heard of this thing? A lot of things dissolve in water apart from lipid based like fats. So osmosis and diffusion are same thing as far as the direction of movement is concerned. Okay. Diffusion can also be of gaseous substances, solid substances, or liquid substances. Osmosis is only of water, aqueous substance, not of all the liquids also. Is it clear, Aisha and Rehab? The difference is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, next point, write down. Apart from doing all of this, one other function of kidney that is asked is it secretes hormones. Write down secretion of hormones. Now, it secretes two hormones which are very important. One is called erythropoietin. Now, you will tell me, where have you heard the word erythropoietin? This is a hormone. Have you heard the word erythro before?
Yes, sir.
Where, Mariam?
Erythrocyte something.
Yes. So what does erythro means? Red blood cells, right?
Yes, sir.
Erythro is always associated with RBCs. And the term poiesis, poietin comes from the term poiesis. And poiesis means synthesis or creation. So what does erythropoiesis means? Simple.
Red blood synthesis.
Yes, production of red blood cells. So this hormone, erythropoietin, write down, it stimulates the production of red blood cells. And why have we given this job to kidneys? It will make logic to you. It will make sense to you. See, kidneys, all the blood has to go through kidneys always, right? There are two organs through which blood always on a daily basis goes. One is heart and the other is kidney, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, heart could also do this job, but heart is already overwhelmed with a lot of things. It's doing a lot actually. Kidneys can actually get to know a measure of number of, like, what is the number of red blood cells, white blood cells, and all other kinds of elements in the blood. And it's also regulating the pH, the osmolarity, and the water salt balance, which heart is not doing. So if kidneys feel that this person's blood is lacking RBCs, and in which disease RBCs are less, do you know? When RBCs are less, then hemoglobin will be less, right? The direct readout to say that there is less RBC in someone's body is to check for hemoglobin. If your hemoglobin count is low, then your number of RBCs are low. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
It's a readout. Now, in anemia, you have heard the disease anemia?
Yes, sir.
In anemia, you have very low hemoglobin and also the number of RBCs. In such cases where RBCs level decline, erythropoietin is secreted by the kidneys to stimulate the production of RBCs. Is it clear?
Yes.
Another major hormone that kidneys synthesize is called calcitriol. Sorry, calcitriol. Calcitriol. Have you heard this word before? You've heard the word calci, right?
Vitamin D.
Yes, it's basically the functional form of vitamin D3, very specifically. So it's calcitriol is the functional form of vitamin D3. So that is also, so write down, the active form of vitamin D3, calcitriol, is also secreted by kidneys. In the last class, I also told you that this is an excretory systems part, but since we are doing it, let's do it here. I told you that kidneys also secrete one enzyme. Remember the name? Remember this? Renin.
Yes, sir.
What does renin do? So those who are not in the last class, probably you missed renin. So anyone knows what renin do? Mariam?
Catalyzing of the hormone, something.
Angiotensinogen to angiotensin.
Yes, sir.
Right? And what is angiotensin? A vasodilator or vasoconstrictor?
Vasoconstrictor.
Yes, and it increases the blood pressure, right? So kidneys secrete renin. Okay. Also, write down next point. What does it do? It regulates the blood glucose level also. It regulates the blood glucose level and gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis. Now again, let's come to the terminology. The word gluco means glucose, neo means new, genesis means production or synthesis, right? Poiesis or genesis means the same thing. So gluconeogenesis means producing glucose in the blood. And where is glucose stored? Remember I told you which organ in our body is associated with storage of glucose? Liver. Liver stores glucose in the form of glycogen. Do you remember this?
Yes, sir.
So liver is the energy storing organ also, and it stores glucose in the form of glycogen. Remember gen? Pepsinogen, inactive form of pepsin.
Yes, sir.
Angiotensinogen, inactive form of angiotensin. Glycogen, inactive form of glucose, the sugar, the energy giving starch, because it's stored. So we have to just pack it and store it. Now gluconeogenesis is the process by which glycogen is converted back to glucose and put back in the blood. Understand? So glycogen conversion into glucose. Just the opposite. Normally, when we eat food, glucose comes in the blood and all the excess glucose goes and gets stored in the liver in the form of glycogen. Clear?
Yes, sir.
But under certain conditions where our blood glucose falls very down and we need a lot of glucose in the body, then kidney tells the liver that to regulate the blood glucose level, it tells the liver to form new glucose back. And it happens mostly during very adverse conditions, like someone got stuck somewhere where they are not getting enough food. In that sense, in that case, ADH also will be released. Remember I told you ADH in the last class? Antidiuretic hormone, which will take all the water from the urine. Hello, am I audible?
Sir, you stopped screen sharing?
Yeah, the screen got, I lost the screen. Okay, just 1 minute. I'll just bring it back. Okay, but I'm audible and visible to you, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I was saying that, remember ADH, antidiuretic hormone, under the effect of which all the water, most of the water is taken back from urine and put into the blood to increase the blood pressure. And,
Yes, sir.
and to prevent a person from dehydration, remember?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Similarly, under conditions where food is not available, can you see the screen now that I've shared, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So under these conditions, glycogen conversion back to glucose also takes place. And the signal comes from kidneys, goes to liver, and all the glycogen which is stored is brought back into the blood in the form of glucose, right? Now write down. Okay, apart from, okay, I'll talk about that later. Let's not confuse you here. Okay. So these are the major functions. Have you written, everyone has written all the functions?
Yes, sir.
I proceed now to the more anatomical features. Okay, let's come to structure of kidneys. And I will add 2 more functions to this list, but not now because it will confuse you. So let's just first talk about the structure, and then I'll ask you to go back. So just leave 2 lines, 2 or 3 lines, because you will add 1 or 2 more functions to this list. So these are the general functions which are asked in exams. Now let's go to the structure of the kidneys. Now what are kidneys? What do kidneys look like?
Beans?
Yeah, it's called bean shaped because it's like a bean. Okay. And where it is?
On the dorsal side of the body?
Yes, it's also called at the posterior wall of the abdomen. Okay. Posterior wall of the abdomen. Anterior and towards the posterior. Because from there onwards, leg starts. So that is where abdomen ends, right? The lower abdomen. So write down. Kidneys, human kidneys are bean shaped, reddish in color, and in your NCERT, in the diagram, there'll be one yellow colored triangular thing on the top of the kidneys. Okay, that is not a part of the kidney. About that we'll study later. So they are bean shaped, reddish in color, and each kidney measures about 10 to 12 centimeter in length. So I'm talking about this. So let's make a kidney here. Say it's bean shaped. So the length of each kidney is around 10 to 12 centimeter. The width is around 5 to 7 centimeter. And because it's a 3D, it's bean, like it's bean like, so it will also have a thickness. Beans also have thickness. You understand? So the thickness, if you go into the Z plane, the thickness will be around 2 to 3 centimeter. So if you can imagine a kidney now, so you know that it's kind of flat like a bean, right? Because it's just 2 to 3 centimeters. So it's like this. So where there is a length, and then there is a width, and then there is a what we call it, thickness. Okay, so the thickness is the smallest. Now inside the kidneys, so there are few things that you have to understand right now, and if you have any difficulty, just ask me, because I will be using this structure verbally a lot to make a lot of statements. So it's important for you to understand. Now it's obvious that if kidneys have to filter something, blood has to go inside the kidney, right?
Yes, sir.
Now what will bring blood into the kidney?
Artery.
Artery, right? Anything which basically goes away from the heart and goes into any organ is the artery, right? So there'll be a artery going in. And what will we call this artery? Because it's going inside the kidney, we will call it renal artery, right?
Yes, sir.
So renal artery brings blood where? Towards the kidney or away from the kidney? Tell me. Renal artery will bring blood towards the kidney or away from the kidney?
Towards.
Yes. Okay. Then you have a, whatever happens inside the kidney, we'll talk about that but later. But then you have something which goes out, takes the blood out, and this will be called renal vein. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now inside the kidney, there are certain chambers. Okay. So kidney is not one structure which works. Kidney has multiple different chambers, units, which do the same thing, like repeating units. And these units are arranged like this in the kidney. Okay, so all these units are identical. They are arranged more neater than my drawing is. So just pardon me for my bad drawing. But like this, in the center, there is some space, and towards the periphery, there are these units which are present. Now, inside these units, we call these units as renal medulla. For anything in biology, like for cell also, cortex is the outermost thing and medulla is inside. Okay. Even for brain, we have cortex, outer cortex, and inside is medulla. Do you understand? So this
Yes,
is
sir.
the inside of the kidney. That's why it's called renal medulla. The outside, this part, the capsule which is covering, is called renal cortex. Clear? The same thing is used for a cell. If you draw a cell, and this is the nucleus, we call that this area is the cell cortex. Okay. And this area here towards the inside is the medullary lesion. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is renal medulla. Now, inside this renal medulla, there are multiples, like thousands of small structures which are just repeating units. Basically, it's like a sieve. Okay, have you seen a sieve? So all these small holes do the same thing, right? But there are multiple thousands of them to just increase the amount of work that can be done in one go. Is it clear? So one subunit, one functional subunit of kidney, which is present in this renal medulla, is called a nephron. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So write down nephron and just write down its definition. Write down. A nephron is the functional unit of the kidneys present in renal medulla. The functional unit of kidney is present in renal medulla. Now, one question that has come is the flow of blood. So let's just talk about the full flow of blood, where I will then explain nephron. So as Mariam told us, that blood enters into the kidney through renal artery, right? So this is the first thing where blood will come. From renal artery, it goes to a lot of arterioles. So it, remember, arteries break down into arterioles and then go on to become smaller and smaller and become
Yes, sir.
capillaries. So renal arteries, after subsequent bifurcations, finally to reach each nephron, which is very small. So renal arteries become glomerular capillary. Glomerular, yes. I have difficulty saying this word, but renal artery breaks down and the smallest part becomes the glomerular capillary. This glomerular capillary is a part of a structure called glomerulus, which we will study now. This is where all the chemistry of filtering is happening inside the nephron. Okay, one nephron. So arteries becomes G capillaries, and then it becomes efferent arterioles. So this is just the flow that you have to remember for board, for entrances, not for boards. See, there are two words in biology called efferent and efferent. Efferent always brings towards. Efferent takes away. So how I remember it is that efferent starts with E and it's like exit. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
So efferent takes blood away from the glomerulus after filtration has happened. And now after all the filtration from all these capillaries has happened, what will happen? All these will join together and the filtered blood will again be collected and then sent into the vein. Remember? So efferent arteriole becomes peritubular capillaries. So this peritubular capillaries is in between the, it's an in-between structure which basically collects all the blood from all different nephrons and then bring it towards a major vein. And that major vein is called peritubular vein. From peritubular vein, it goes into arcuate vein. These are some, there are a lot of things in between, but those have been never asked. So I'm just telling you the major ones. And then finally it reaches renal vein. And from there, it will be dumped into the vena cava. Now, see, it started with renal artery. Inside the kidney, there is glomerulus, where it became glomerular capillary. Then efferent arterioles took it away from the glomerular capillary and brought it towards a tube-like structure, which is called peritubular capillary. Then it became vein because it will be taken away by a vein, peritubular vein. These two terms also, if you do not remember, it's fine. They have been asked only, like I have seen it being asked in previous papers of AIMS or some high-end entrances. But renal artery, glomerular capillary, efferent arteriole, peritubular capillary, and renal vein. This is the normal flow. And from renal vein, it will come to a systemic vein, like the vein of the system. Now, where are kidneys located? In the lower body or in the upper body?
Lower.
So which vein will take that blood to heart? There are two major veins. Yes, Maria.
Inferior
Perfect.
artery. I mean, vein.
Inferior vena cava. That vein is called inferior vena cava. There are two, inferior vena cava and superior vena cava. So finally, blood that started with renal artery ended up in the inferior vena cava. Is it clear? This flow is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any doubt?
No,
Now
sir.
we will spend, so the basic story in your mind is clear now, right? About kidneys. Now the most important part which we are going to start and on which a lot of questions come is how this filtration happens in a nephron. Nephron. So we will study about the structure. And for this, let me just put it because I have to make this diagram. So once you understand this diagram, it will become very easier for you. Okay. So let me take. Yeah. Okay. So things start with the this part. Things start with renal artery. Okay. Now let's draw it. What I am drawing here is a bulging ball-like structure, which is called glomerulus. Now each glomerulus, I'm first drawing the nephron. So keep drawing with me. Each glomerulus is made up of a series of convoluted, it's a tube and it's very convoluted. Why it's convoluted, we will come to it. So it goes up and down and then all of a sudden it starts going and then comes up. The anatomical design also is important here from biology's perspective. We will discuss about that, but just let me draw this in peace. Yes. And then again, it becomes convoluted before it goes into a major duct. Okay. So this thing, okay, let me first complete. For marking, I will use black. This thing here, everyone can see me and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. It's called the collecting duct. It's at the very end of the whole process. So I'm just starting backwards. Basically, kidney starts here, but this is the collecting duct where everything, the final blood is collected. And you see these branches which I have left. It's obviously you understood that a lot of other such connections are here, right? So one collecting duct is connected to a lot of nephrons. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So from lot of nephrons, things come and get collected in one collecting duct. And where it is going? It's going towards the, we call that region as renal pelvis. And from there, it goes towards vena cava or vein. Is it clear? So I've just told you about the exit. Now let me take another color. Which color should I take? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Just 1 minute. Let me choose red color for artery. Okay. Now this structure here is called glomerulus. And inside the glomerulus, there is this depression. It's like a bowl, okay? And which is called Bowman's capsule. Now, from outside, remember artery, right? So artery, okay, artery comes and just makes a very convoluted structure here. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
And from here, this artery is just, so I'm just drawing a line, but you imagine a tube. This artery just keeps moving around this loop. So it's like everywhere. It's just covering it and it's just moving around it. Okay. So basically, why it's moving around it, I will tell you. So it makes a network. So whatever is in red is the artery. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
And after this point of time, which color should I use for vein? I should have used blue for vein, but it use purple. After one point of time, so there is no clear-cut division between an artery and a vein, because see, at very extreme end, when they bifurcate into capillaries, then these capillaries again coalesce together and become veins, right? So there is no end to an artery and starting of a vein. Do you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Somewhere from here, we say that what is in purple is the vein. So a network of vein is around this tube. It moves all around and then leaves goes. So this goes and becomes a part of, this is coming from the body. So see, it will take some time, but I'll explain this to you once the diagram is done. And I prefer to make this diagram because you are also, all of you are making with me, right? Or are you just watching a movie?
Making, sir.
Good.
Making sense.
Yes, this whole exercise is because you will make it with me and will realize it yourself. Otherwise, I could have just copy pasted a image. Okay. And this also goes. Oh, it was much easier on a board. Okay. Looks good, something like this. Okay, now let me mark everything. So blood is coming from the body into the nephron through, remember we read a term called arcuate artery, arcuate vein, or renal artery or renal vein.
Yes, sir.
I'm using the word arcuate artery and arcuate vein because they will again go out of the kidney and become the towards the mouth of the kidney. It will become the renal artery and renal vein. but let's say it's inside the kidney already. It's the arcuate artery and arcuate vein. So blood comes from here and it moves into the Bowman's capsule where it make the glomerulus. Is it clear? In this glomerulus, this convoluted structure which you are seeing, it's basically all the blood is there, and there is exchange between the glomerular, and you remember that whatever glomerulus takes, there is a tube which is taking it also away, right? And artery does not leaves the kidney just after getting first pass filter. So looking at this structure, it's very evident. Let's see, blood came into the kidney, got filtered in this glomerulus, and this capsule-like structure is called Bowman's capsule. So it got filtered here. But whatever happened, whatever got filtered, the blood is not happy with it. And it's not like it just came here, got filtered and left and went into the body. It is tracing down wherever this tube, the tube of the nephron is going, it's just tracing it down, right? And then after some time, it's again coalescing itself back, becoming a vein, and then leaving from the nephron. Is it clear? And whatever,
Yes, sir.
whatever this tube collected is finally dumping it into the collecting duct, which will go to the vena cava. Sorry, it will not go to the vena cava. This is it's not going to vena cava. This will go to the vena cava, right? Articulate vein, renal vein, and it will go finally to vena cava. So blood got filtered, and before this articulate artery, there was renal artery. Before this, there was systemic artery. Is it clear? Anyone? Any doubts? From artery, blood entered into the kidney, and when it entered the kidney, at the mouth of it, remember I made it here, it's called the renal artery, right? Just at the mouth part where it's entering the kidney. And when it entered inside it will be called arcuate artery, and then it will go to the glomerulus. Things will get filtered here. We will discuss, we will study about the filtration in a short time. And then whatever gets filtered, the arteries and the capillaries keep following that tube for some time throughout, and then leave as a arcuate vein, then renal vein, out of the kidney, vena cava. Is it clear? Blood came, got filtered, left. That is the whole thing of blood. Whatever got collected in this collecting duct came towards the renal pelvis, and from the renal pelvis, what is there? Ureters. Remember, one pair of ureter, one from each kidney.
Yes, sir.
Ureter, it goes into urinary bladder, and finally from urinary bladder, it's thrown out through urethra. Okay, this is the full. Any doubt in this? And there are millions of such repeating units in the kidney. This is one nephron. So shall we proceed with functionalities of nephron? Is the broader anatomy clear to you, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now write down some points. The Bowman's capsule or the glomerulus. The Bowman's capsule is also called glomerular capsule. So there are multiple names given to it in textbooks. It can also be known as glomerular capsule, Bowman's capsule, or glomerulus. Okay. In the Bowman capsule, it is a double walled epithelial cup. So this is where everything starts. It's a double walled epithelial cup. So this structure is like a cup. Okay. It's like a depression, and it looks something like a bowl which has a depression. So all the veins come and fit into this depression like this, sits, makes a convoluted fit into this, and this takes all the waste and leaves the blood. Now the problem with glomerulus or Bowman's capsule is it cannot differentiate between what is useful and what is harmful. Do you understand? So there is an order, or there is a logic by which glomerulus filters things out. It will filter everything from the blood except for the blood cells, which is platelets, RBCs, WBCs, and dissolved proteins in it. So it will just leave those 4 things and will filter everything out. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So everything that it filtered out, was everything bad? Was everything waste? No, right? There were dissolved salts and minerals which were important for the body, but kidney or the glomerulus does not know the demarcation. It just tells, okay, this is not a constitution of blood. So come out of the line and come into the glomerulus. Okay, come into the tube. So everything goes into the tube. Okay, and blood, the first pass filter of the blood is where blood, pure blood, is separated along with its protein. Why proteins are not taken out? Because proteins are too big to be taken out by Bowman's capsule. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so proteins are not taken out. So blood and protein stays there, but everything else comes out. Now the blood realizes that this is not what I wanted. I do want it to get filtered and get pure, but it has taken way more than I was willing to give. I have to take those substances like dissolved salts, minerals, and other things to other cells. So that's why after Bowman's capsule, it keeps following this tube. And I'm just telling you like a layman story so that this story fits into your mind. Throughout this journey, now, the way I teach my students this is that this is a story of bargaining. Okay. So you went to airport and this is the first door where checking happens. And it says that you will just take the flight tickets and just few stuffs, like the major stuffs, but not everything. So they keep your watch, wallet, belt, and everything. But those are also important, right? To you. You understand the story?
Yes, sir.
So the first gateman at the glomerulus, which is the Bowman's capsule, says that I don't know anything. I have been given orders to separate everything from the blood, and I will do that. If you have any problem, go talk to the officials. So you entered the airport, like you went through the first pass filter. Now you went to someone in authority and you are trying to explain them that, see, this is not a waste. Yeah, it's different from blood, but it's not a waste. Minerals, we need minerals. The cells need minerals. So please give me back minerals so that I can take it to different parts of the body. That is not a waste. You only can take urea. Okay, so urea is a waste. I was here to dump urea, but you took everything. So that's why this artery, this blood vessel, continues, and you only have time till you reach here, somewhere here, right? Because after this, it will dump it into the collecting duct. Once things goes into the collecting duct, they do not come back. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So whatever is useful, these blood vessels, which are following this tube, renal tube, they have to just bargain and reabsorb things which are useful till this point, somewhere here. Okay. And that's why you will see that this blood vessel leaves after this point and goes out. And it has to make sure that everything which is good comes back to the blood and everything which was bad stays in this loop and then leaves through collecting duct, mostly which is urea, the waste. So is the broader story clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Now let's mark some areas because we will talk in that term from now onwards. So this is glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. The first part here, I have a black pen. This part. So whatever I am marking, I'm not marking the red or violet. I'm just marking the blue, the tube. So this is called the proximal tube. Oh, sorry, too big. So this part is called the proximal tube. Proxy. Proxi. Proximal tube or tubule. Okay. Then from the proximal tubule onwards, it goes down, and this part, which is like a U-shaped part, is called loop of Henle. What it is called?
Loop of Henle.
Loop of Henle. Henle. Okay. You all are marking with me, right? I
Yes,
want
sir.
all of you to do the hard work with me. Otherwise, it's very difficult to just memorize. So this is loop of Henle. Now, this part of loop of Henle is going down, and this part of loop of Henle is going up, right? This is the flow of the blood or anything which is inside the tube. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So this part is called descending loop of Henle. What is it called? Descending loop of Henle. I'm writing LOH. Understand, it's loop of Henle. And this part will be called ascending loop of Henle. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle. And then when it reaches top, again you see there is convolutions. So just like proximal tubule, this part here, which just before entering the collecting duct, is called distal tubule. Now, all of this was very difficult for me to explain without drawing it myself and making you draw it yourself. Okay, that's why we are doing this hard work. So glomerulus, just remember the flow. Glomerulus or the Bowman's capsule, where the blood gets filtered, and everything, even some important things are taken out of the blood. Then it goes into the proximal tubule. Then it comes down into the descending loop of Henle, then goes up into the ascending loop of Henle, then into the distal tubule, and then finally into the collecting duct. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now, whatever is happening, all the chemistry that is happening between glomerulus and collecting duct. In glomerulus, gross filtering is happening. Simple. Remove everything from the blood, which you think is not blood. And in collecting duct, everything which is dumped, now there is only one way to send it through ureters to urinary bladder and urethra. So whatever came out, we cannot do anything now. So all the chemistry is happening here in this part. Do you see my cursor?
Yes, sir.
So this is the part about which we will study now in detail for the next some time. Any doubt in this? Anyone? Any doubt
No,
with the
sir.
nephron? So it's slightly confusing. That's why we are spending some time here. So I give you 2 minutes, all of you. Please go through whatever you have noted and drawn. Complete this diagram if you have anything to complete, and then I will carry forward. I think everything else was easy. This is the part. Okay, so I give you 2 minutes. Just look what do you find is difficult or is easy or something like that. And ask me if you have any doubts. Anyone?
Sir, arcuate artery is the renal artery.
Okay, good. So remember this diagram here. So
Yes,
when
sir.
it is entering into the kidney, when an artery, before it was in the kidney, it was just in the body, right? If an artery is in the body, we will just call it systemic artery. It's the artery of the system. Clear, Mariam?
Yes, sir.
When it starts entering into the kidney, now we call that this particular artery is the renal artery because it's going into the kidney. There will be many such arteries around kidney, right? In the body, we have lots and lots of arteries everywhere. So suppose someone is doing a kidney transplant. So they know that which artery to cut and then join back again, right? Because there'll be one artery which will be going into the kidney and coming out of the kidney. That is the renal vein. So renal artery and renal vein are at the mouth of the kidney, right here. Okay. Here, right here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
When it enters the kidney, inside the kidney, it starts bifurcating. Okay. It starts branching, becoming smaller and smaller and smaller so that it has to reach each Bowman's capsule. And there are millions of Bowman's capsule in one kidney. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So from there onwards, when it is inside the kidney, systemic artery touching the kidney or entering into the kidney, renal artery. Inside the kidney, it's called arcuate artery. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Which further becomes capillaries. And when it reaches the glomerulus, if someone asks that what do you call this part, this thing here, you can call it a glomerular capillary. I have written this thing here. See, glomerular capillary, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this part just before entering the glomerulus is so thin that it becomes like a capillary or a capillary, and this is called glomerular capillary. Then it's like the concept of deoxygenated and oxygenated blood is same. It's like there, and it comes out as a vein, which is called arcuate vein. Goes out through renal vein, like when it is inside the kidney but going out arcuate. When it touches the kidney and on the border and coming out of the kidney, it's a renal vein. And then finally, just like systemic artery, there is a systemic vein called vena cava. Clear, Mariam? Any doubt?
Yes, sir.
Any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay, everyone clear? Please at least say yes, because so that I know you are on the same page, so that I start with more complex things now. Aisha, Rehab, Omar, it's good time to say yes, you are clear. I will not. Clear, Omar?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Rehab. Aisha? Aisha, are you clear? Should I move forward? So if you think this is complex, this was just the beginning. Sorry to say, not to demoralize you, but it's easy. Once you go through a story, it's easy. Okay, so let's start now. But before we start, write down some things, write down certain points which are important and are asked in exam. Write down blood plasma. Blood plasma is filtered in the glomerular capsule. Okay, the Bowman's capsule. Blood plasma is filtered because only plasma can get filtered. Remember, I told you no WBC, no RBC can come out and get into the Bowman capsule. No, even proteins can't come, because if proteins are big enough, then cells are bigger than proteins. So write down, blood plasma is filtered in the glomerular capsule. And then the filtered fluid passes into the renal tubule. So all this blue thing which I have drawn, right from the glomerulus to the collecting duct, is called renal tubule. The renal tubule has different names at different regions. Proximal tubule, descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, and distal tubule. But all four of this collectively is known as renal tubule. Clear?
Sir.
Yes, it's the filtered fluid passes into the renal tubule. And the renal tubule consists of, this question comes that explain the anatomy and function of nephron with a diagram. It's sometimes a 5 or a 10 marker question, a big question. You have to make this diagram. The renal tubule consists of a proximal tubule, descending loop of Henle, a proximal tubule, descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, distal tubule, and distal tubule. Till distal tubule, it's the renal tubule. After that, collecting duct starts. Collecting duct is not called a renal tubule because it's common duct. A lot of renal tubules come and join in the collecting duct. Okay. Also, for entrance point of view, write down this as a star mark. Loop of Henle, both ascending and descending, is known as the nephron loop. The nephron loop. Remember, I told you all the chemistry is happening here only. So this is the major part, the descending loop and the ascending loop. So it's also known as nephron loop. Now, write down. The distal tubules of multiple nephrons, the distal tubule of multiple nephrons empties into a single collecting duct. Empties into a single collecting duct. And there are also multiple collecting ducts. Remember this diagram? Everyone look here. Remember these chambers I told you about?
Yes, sir.
So from each chamber, few collecting ducts are coming out. 1 or 2 or 3 collecting ducts are coming out. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So there are multiple collecting ducts as well. But multiple distal tubules empty into a single collecting duct. And okay, now write down, this is from entrance, for entrance, that around 80 to 85% of all the nephrons, 80 to 85% of all the nephrons are cortical nephrons. Cortical and medulla. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So most of the nephrons are present where? Towards the surface of the kidney. Towards the center, remember I told you that there's some space here. This space is for coming and joining of a lot of tubes, collecting ducts, and renal artery bifurcating and renal vein collecting together. So all that happens here. Here, okay? So most of, if I take another color and show you the region, I'll just shade the region. Most of your nephrons are present in this part, okay? Which is called the cortical part of the kidney. The central or the medulla part is mostly only 10 to 15%, 15 to 20% of the nephrons are there. Mostly what happens is tubes coalesce and bifurcate here. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
Sir, the separated parts have the nephrons.
Sorry,
The small compartments have the nephrons, or the around it.
yes, these small compartments have the nephrons, but the half part of it, which is towards the cortex, has most of the nephrons, and the lower parts, as you go deeper into the kidney, nephrons decreases. This is what I'm trying to say. So if you take a kidney bean, those are called kidney beans because they shape like kidneys, and you start poking it with a pin. So the more deeper you go, the less nephrons you will find. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
It's like from earth, first come crust, mantle, and core. And most of the rocks are present in the crust. Almost all rocks are present in the crust. So as deeper you go, rocks are less and molten lava is more, right?
Yes, sir.
Same concept is for kidneys. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
This is what I'm saying, that 80 to 85% of all the nephrons are called cortical nephrons. Their name are cortical nephrons because they are in the cortical region. And Now, why this? I forgot why I told you this. Yes, yes. So cortical nephrons, because they are already towards the periphery, remember? So these cortical nephrons have shorter loop of Henle. Again, for entrances, not for boards. If nephrons are towards the cortical periphery, they have a shorter loop of Henle. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
That's why they are cortical, because if they would have longer loops, the loop will reach all the way towards medulla, right? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
If the loops are shorter, they will always stay in the cortical region. So they have shorter loops, whereas nephrons which are close to medulla, the inner side, nephrons, those 15 to 20%, the rest, nephrons which are close to medulla have longer loop of Henle, which runs deep into the medulla. They have longer loop of Henle, which runs deep into the medulla. Clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, which structure of nephron decides whether the nephron will be called cortical or medullary? This question has come in NEET.
The length of the loop of Henle.
Yeah, so option will be the Bowman's capsule, loop of Henle, proximal tubule, or distal tubule.
Loop of Henle.
Loop of Henle. So loop of Henle, the length of loop of Henle and how deeper it goes into the kidney decides that whether you will call that nephron as a cortical nephron or a medullary nephron. Because most of the time the glomerulus stays in the cortex. So this also you can write down. In medulla, glomerulus is not present. Okay. Glomerulus is mostly present. Even for those nephrons which are called medullary nephrons, their glomerulus is present in the cortex only. Everyone is clear on this, or someone has any doubts?
Sir, could you repeat?
I was saying that glomerulus or the Bowman's capsule, this part here, this stays in the cortex only for almost all nephrons. Even those which are called medullary nephrons, the glomerulus is in the cortex only. It's the loop of Henle whose length decides whether it's called a medullary nephron because it goes deep into the medulla, or it is called a cortical nephron because it stays in the cortex, the upper part of the kidney. This red part that I have shaded towards the outside. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Any doubt? No doubt, everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
So there are cortical nephrons and the medullary nephrons. They have another name which comes in your entrances, which is called juxtamedullary nephrons. So write down the other form of nephrons are called juxtamedullary. So either it is cortical nephron. Okay. So this will just, so let me divide. So above this line is cortex of a kidney and below this line is medulla of the kidney. So the Bowman's capsule is somewhere here and the loop of Henle is here. Okay, this is a cortical nephron. Is it clear? The other is juxtamedullary nephron. For this, if I draw the line, above this line is cortex towards the outer side of the kidney and below is the medulla of the kidney. So this nephron will look like this. The Bowman's capsule still will be outside in the cortex, okay? But the loop of Henle will go deep into the medulla and then come out. This is the collecting duct. Do you understand, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Very good. This is just for your entrances, not for your boards. But remember this. Yeah. Now, since everything is clear to you, all the anatomy is clear to you, let's talk about the actual thing. which is important for both boards and entrances, which is called the process of urine formation. How is urine formed? What's happening? What is the chemistry? What is urine actually? Okay. Shall we move ahead?
Yes, sir.
Now write down, for the formation of urine, let's come to the chemistry. For the formation of urine, 3 basic processes happen. Three basic processes happen in the nephron. Okay. The first process, first thing that happens is called glomerular filtration. Right? Make sense? I told you about this.
Yes, sir.
Second thing is called tubular reabsorption. That renal tubule, remember? Proximal, descending,
Yes, sir.
ascending, distal. The renal tubule has tubular reabsorption. So this is the part where you are bargaining with an official. Remember the story? The gatekeeper, the glomerulus, took everything from you. Now you are going to the renal tubular, which is the higher officer, and saying that, see, at least let me take my watch with me. It's important for me. So they are now bargaining for ions and minerals and salts dissolved in the blood because they are important, right? So that's why it's called reabsorption. So whatever went out of the blood now will be reabsorbed in the blood because it's important. Okay, I'm just trying to make it as easy for you to remember as I can. This is how I teach every time. Is it clear? Is it making sense to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Then the third process is called tubular secretion. Tubular secretion, where certain things are secreted by the renal tubule itself into the lumen of the tubule. And finally, after all these 3 steps, what will happen? Excretion, right? But excretion is happening through urethra and gallbladder, so it's not happening in the kidney. So in kidneys, in every nephron, these 3 things are happening: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's come to the first one, which is glomerular filtration. Just here. Write down glomerular filtration. Just write down a few points first. When blood enters the Bowman's capsule or glomerular capsule, when blood enters the Bowman's capsule, due to the glomerular blood pressure, water and small solutes, solute you all are clear with, right? Water is the solvent of the blood and solutes are those dissolved things.
Yes, sir.
We are not taking into consideration blood cells here. Blood cell has no role to play in kidneys. Kidney just makes sure that you have normal number of RBCs. And if you have less number of RBCs, it will just start producing something called erythropoietin. To tell that, okay, while I was filtering the blood, I realized that you have very small number of RBCs. So it will tell the brain or the body to make more RBCs. That's all. Okay. But those are not filtered or done anything. So only the plasma gets filtered. In the plasma, water is the solvent and other things are solutes. So due to blood pressure, water and small solutes, in bracket write down glucose, the most major, glucose, amino acids, ions, and nitrogenous waste. These are those 4 solutes along with water. Water and small solutes in bracket you have written glucose, amino acids, ions, and nitrogenous waste, right?
Yes, sir.
Moves from the blood moves from the blood inside the glomerular capsule. So basically it takes everything from the blood. Do you realize now? And out of these 4 things, only one thing is not required, which is nitrogenous waste, right?
Yes, sir.
We need glucose. This is your watch and your mobile phone and your fancy shoes. We need all of this. You just do not need a Swiss knife, which you brought with you at the airport mistakenly. So you will allow them to keep the Swiss knife, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So all the 3 things which are important for the blood, for the body, which kidneys does not know. Kidney is like, no. I will just take everything which is not blood. I have this job to do. So due to blood pressure in the first step, what happens is all these water also comes out, and water is also important, right? Water comes out and ions comes out, glucose comes out, amino acids comes out, and nitrogenous waste comes out into the glomerular capsule. Now write down. In this filtration process, larger molecules like proteins and blood cells and platelets, larger molecules like proteins and blood cells and platelets cannot pass through the capillary wall. So that's why they stay in the blood. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now everything that glomerulus or glomerular capsule has filtered out, thinking that it is not required, is called glomerular filtrate. A question has come on this. So we are doing the first step. It's called glomerular filtrate. Now, if I ask you, is glomerular filtrate waste material? What will you say? Is it a waste thing?
No.
No. Glomerular filtrate contains very important things: glucose, amino acids, ions, and also wastes and water. So out of 5 things, at least 4 things are useful to us. So it is mostly useful substance. And if we just allow body to throw out this glomerular filtrate, will we survive?
No.
No. So that's why blood has to bargain them back. And that's why this structure I made you draw, so that you understand, just after the filtration, the blood does not leave. It stays there, keeps on bargaining, saying, okay, no, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. And when they get everything useful, then they leave as vein. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Very good. So this is called glomerular filtrate. So question came that which of the following are constituents of glomerular filtrate. So often students who have not drawn this and gone through this story think that, oh, glomerular filtrate means kidney has filtered it out, means it will be waste. So the options will be nitrogenous waste, ions, glucose, all of the above. So what will be the answer?
All of the above.
All of the above. Very good. Okay, so write down, it's called glomerular filtrate. And also contains important stuff. It contains important stuff. Now, if we are taking out so much from the blood. We are taking water, we are taking glucose, we are taking ions, we are taking nitrogenous wastes, and we are taking, what are we taking? Amino acids.
Glucose.
Amino acids. Yeah. So we are taking so much. So the glomerular filtrate will be very large in amount, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you know what is the amount of filtrate that glomerular produces in a day? How much things glomerulus filters in a day? Write down. Glomerular filtrate is approximately 180 liters per day. 180 liters. Is this the amount of urine we excrete out?
No.
No. Can we excrete out 180 liters of solvent per day or anything per day? The total amount of blood we have is 6 liters, right? It clearly tells you that glomerular filtrate needs to be reabsorbed. Almost 99.9% of it needs to be reabsorbed, remember?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because it's 180 liters per day. Around every hour, it's like 7 to 8 liters per hour. So it's like you have to go and urinate 7 liters of urine per hour. Yeah, that's not possible. So, and you understand the point now, right? Out of 6 liters, I am saying that in a day, it just filtrates 180 liters, means it's filtrating, blood is asking it back. So glomerular filtration is happening, then reabsorption is happening. Filtration is happening, reabsorption is happening, right? At the same
Yes,
time.
sir.
So overall, body never loses that thing. Body never loses glucose, or body never loses amino acids, or body never loses ions. So it all reabsorbed back. So glomerular tubular reabsorption is the most important thing that happens during excretion. Okay. So write down. Almost more than 99% of the glomerular filtrate, almost more than 99% of the glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed back in the blood, leaving only nitrogenous waste. Leaving only nitrogenous waste. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Now come to the second part, which is your tubular reabsorption. Tubular reabsorption. Anything else I need to tell you about glomerular filtration? No. If I'll remember of anything, I'll. So it's still a lot of details more than your NCERT, but if I remember of anything, I'll tell you. Okay. Yeah. Write down. Tubular reabsorption. Second part. Anyone has any doubt regarding glomerular filtration?
No, sir.
Reabsorption. So if you just go back after today's class, sit and tell this same story to anyone in your house. You know, I used to do this. So as students, don't be merciful on your parents and your family. If you're a biology student, everyone should know you are a biology student, and everyone should be afraid of the fact that you're a biology student. So just sit with your parents or your siblings, even if they're smaller one, and tell them, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a arcuate artery. Okay, start from there, tell the complete story. They will be bored to death, and you will consolidate in your memory this thing as a story. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
The same thing I used to do here with my cat.
Very cat.
Yeah.
My God. Okay, you are one step ahead. You know, so I have rescued cats or dogs sometimes, but I've never had a like a constant pet in my house, so I could not do
Yeah,
it.
I have both cat and dog.
Very good. So that's even better, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Cool. But just make sure that no one sees you talking to a cat.
You know what? They will be like, if I will try to explain them, everyone will be like, they're busy. So sometimes when they will see me doing those stuff, and like they will listen to me, like they are
That's why I
listening
tell these
something
stories.
interesting.
That's why I tell these stories. That's why I tell these stories to people, like younger people at my house or my parents or my nanny. No, because they listen, and after in the end they will ask, "Ki, what was this all about?" I was like, "Nothing. That's the story." I cannot take the risk of talking to animals and then someone sees me talking to animals and then they lose hope in me. Anyways, let's come to tubular reabsorption faster. So write down few things about tubular reabsorption. It is a highly selective process. It is a highly selective process that retrieves or returns that retrieves important material from renal tubules back into the bloodstream. So you know that it has to be highly selective because you just cannot reabsorb whatever you want, whatever you get. You only have to reabsorb important things and a lot of it, and make sure also that while you are reabsorbing 99% of the important things, you deliberately let the tubular fluid keep the nitrogenous waste. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
That's why it has to be highly selective. Otherwise, in that bulk of 99%, nitrogenous waste will also come back in the bloodstream. And this whole process now is failed, right? The whole story failed. We wanted to get rid of it and it came back into the blood. So it never comes back into the blood. So that's why it's a highly selective process. Now write down tubular reabsorption. This you can also write in boards. Tubular reabsorption make sure that out of around 125 ml. So this is a standard for a normal human. 125 ml of glomerular filtrate is produced per minute. Okay, it's just the calculation that you do. Out of 125 ml of glomerular filtrate produced per minute, around 124 ml gets reabsorbed. In that minute only. So now you understand by this statement two things. One, it's highly selective. Second, it's fast, right?
Yes, sir.
Because our kidneys keep on working. Have you also read that or heard that you can even live in one kidney? A person
Yes, sir.
can also survive with one kidney. Now, what do you think? How do you think it's possible? Then why do we have two kidneys in the body? Is the question.
In case one goes bad.
Right? Why then we don't have two hearts, two brains, and two livers? The three most important organs. In case liver gets bad, we should have two livers. In case both of them got bad, we should have three livers. See, that can never be the answer in biology. Biology does not know when organs evolve. It does not know that basically one will get bad or, oh, I can see the future of humanity. They will just start drinking lots and lots of alcohol and toxic substances, which will kill their kidneys. So let me give them two kidneys. For that matter, we should have more lungs, brains, and livers as well. Try again, Maria. Why do you think we have 2 kidneys when we can survive on 1 kidney? And why, how do you think it's possible? It's true that you can survive on 1 kidneys.
For symmetry?
No. Very interesting answers. I never thought of them, but yes. See, all the organs in our body, okay, whether they are 1 or 2 or multiple, any organ in our body which is more than 2, you know, any organ which is more than 2 in our body. No organ which is more than 2. You're thinking about all your organs right now, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, think and let me know, okay, in the next class. But all our organs, whether they are 1 or 2 or in any number, basically they never work at their full capacity all the time. Even for kidneys, both the kidneys combined, when both of them are active and are healthy in our body, they do not work to 100% of their capacity. They always work to 40, 45%, even 30% to their capacity. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So if you lose 1 kidney, all of a sudden, our body will start realizing, brain and heart will start realizing that now I have to increase. And how can you increase? Remember, I told you millions of nephron units are there in 1 kidney.
Yes, sir.
All of them are not occupied all the time. So when you lose 1 kidney, then the other kidney starts working at 80 to 90% or even 100% of its capacity. So burden on the other kidney goes up. But since it can do that, it does that effectively. Now, the only risk is that if you start doing any activity which starts killing that kidney also, then you are doomed. Okay. Same is for our heart. Our heart never works at the optimum capacity, and that's the best example. What is the heartbeat? Normally 72 beats per minute. But when you start running, your heartbeat goes up to 140, 150. Have you realized that? It's double. Which means heart is capable of beating 140 times per minute and still it will not die. It will do that. But all our life, when you are relaxing, when you are sleeping, it even goes low, 40 to 50 beats per minute. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Same is for the brain. Okay, I'll tell you an important, interesting thing. So this is to understand human physiology and to understand the questions which comes. So for brain, we have millions of neurons in the brain. And go and figure out this one term. Whoever will do this will be very amazed and come back and discuss it with me. There is this term called hemispherectomy. Go and find out what is this.
The half brain is
You already know. Okay, very good. You know, it's possible to remove half brain from a person, but not in adulthood. So for every organisms, there is called a developmental window period, which is called the plastic window period, in which brain is not yet fully mature and all the functions are not attributed. You remember studying that we have a speech center, we have a optic center, we have a hearing center in the brain.
yes, sir.
So sometimes if a person has brain injury, eyes are okay, but the person cannot see because the ocular lobe of the brain got damaged. So our eyes are sending signals through optic nerve back into the brain, the back portion. If you get brain damage here, then you will not be able to see even if your eyes are fine, because your brain, which was processing that information, is damaged now. So around 2 to 6 months old baby, and this was first done by a very famous doctor called Ben Carson in USA. He first did it in, there were earlier experiments in dogs which proved that this can be done, and then he did it in a human. So sometimes babies are born with by birth they get epileptic seizures. They are born with epilepsy and they get very devastating seizures, and then they do not live for long. You know, after a few months or years they die. So anyways, your baby is going to die. So these parents agreed for this surgery and he removed half of the brain. Now there will be no epileptic seizure in the brain if half of the brain is removed. And to the amazement, go and find out on internet, there are still people in 2021 living with half brain. And there are articles also which says that half brain is actually better than full, which also again proves that none of our organs work at their maximum capacity under normal physiology. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So go and figure this out. And I'm leaving the tubular reabsorption and secretion. Secretion is slightly important for entrances. So I'll spend some time there. And then we will finish by some hormonal signaling in excretion in the next class. Okay. So anyone has any doubt till now? So I end the class today here only. Anyone has any doubts regarding today's class?
No, sir.
Okay, so go back and please look at what I told you. And also look at kidneys, the real diagrams of kidney. Bye. Good night.
Bye, sir.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
night.
Bye,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
And please revise. Tell your parents and family the story.